Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. The Swim Brief is brought to you by my employer, Jersey Wahoos, a USA Swimming Silver Medal Club in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. We're having a great summer. We had a meet over the weekend, summer solstice. Check out our results there as we look forward to this summer long course season that's I guess been ongoing here now for a little while, which I won't forget that how wonderful it is to be able to say that, to be able to put some certainty to that stuff. But enough on that. I want to talk about Olympic trials. I'm back from my trip abroad. I'm caught up on the results. And all this week, we're going to be talking some stuff from Olympic trials. I'm not going to go over event by event what's going on. I'm going to try to hit some headline thoughts, looking past the meet. And then Eric and Joel are going to join me on Thursday again. And we'll have even more to talk about there, and we'll deliver some extremely hot takes. On this podcast, we're probably just gonna have averagely hot takes. You know, like if Thursday is, you know, a piece of meat that's been put under the broiler, coming right out, you know, smoking hot. This week is going to be more like you set the oven to 350 and you know, warm up some chicken fingers. Okay, so still hot, but not the hottest. Want to talk about. I'm going to talk about. Let me set the agenda. I'm going to talk about Caeleb Dressel. I'm going to talk about Michael Andrew. I want to talk about Simone Manuel a little bit and some of the stuff around her qualifying. Going to talk Bob Bowman. So get excited. Or scared, depending on who you are, me included. And then I want to use that as a transition to talk about some of the coaching selections, some of the discussion around Ron Aitken, and that's sort of where we'll wrap it up. So first, let's get to Dressel. And I have on my outline here, Dressel looks sharp. Okay, you know, it's one thing to come into a meet with super high expectations, and I think the expectations were set very, very high for Caeleb Dressel. You know, especially in this post-Phelps era, the immediate, once somebody sort of gets within range of being able to match Phelps's 8 gold medals. And just remember, you know, in the entire history of the sport, we've had Phelps winning 8 gold medals and Spitz winning 7 gold medals. Okay, so if somebody, Caeleb Dressel perhaps, manages to win 7 gold medals at the Olympics, that will be in the top 3 Olympic performances of all time. Okay, so just setting the table that the expectations are extremely high. And I thought he delivered on all fronts. He was extremely sharp in all his races. He looks a cut above his competition in the 50 free. He looks a cut above his competition in the 100 fly. It looks like he might have a harder time in the 100 free, but you know, I think he's going to be very hard to beat in those 3 races. Okay, and if you turn to the relays, I think the relays are going to be harder for the U.S. You know, one of the big discussions ahead of time was what's going to happen with the 4x200 relay. I think that's going to be a great race, but it's not. We're past, well past an era where you know, the U.S. is a slam dunk. On relays. I think you know, the medley is looking quite a bit better. Okay, probably with Dressel on butterfly. Gosh, I wouldn't want to be the one making that decision, but in all likelihood that seems to be where it should be. Just to get them, I think if they do that, they can enter the freestyle hopefully with some open water. So that's what I would do. I'm not going to be the Olympic coach, and So I think the expectations there are super duper high, and I do think he can deliver on 6 medals, and that's going to be super impressive in any context. And I'm really excited to see it, and I'm really excited to see it in the context of somebody who's this good and seems to be firing on all cylinders. Which brings me to Michael Andrew. You gotta look. Here at the Swim Brief, I want people to listen. I want to build my listener base, and therefore, you've got to have Michael Andrew content, because it gets the people excited. All right, it really animates the base. For whatever reason, people get really animated talking about Michael Andrew. On the podcast a week ago, I talked about how I thought it was really dumb that he's swimming the 100 backstroke. And of course, because the Swim Brief is such an influential podcast, Peter Andrew caught wind of that, and him and Michael had a chat, and he ended up not swimming the 100 fly at the meet. Okay, I'm only kidding. But he did adjust from that point forward and delivered on an awesome 200 IM and an awesome 50 free. I have a lot more to say about the 50 free when we get to Thursday. I got a long-term prediction in regards to that. But the 200 IM, I just want to say I feel very vindicated. Way back when Andrew was dropping some 157s in the lead up, I said he did not need to improve his freestyle leg to make the U.S. Olympic team, and I was right. I think I was joking with a friend last night that Andrew, in the course of his career, he has a chance to break that Ryan Lochte 200 IM world record, and a large part of that is because he is basically somebody who can swim, fly, and back at approximately the same level as Phelps and Lochte in their prime, but is a way better breaststroker, like way, way, way better than those two guys at breaststroke. So he's able to deliver really well on the next leg. And I think, if he does that, it's not like, but we have this frame in our mind as swim coaches of how the race should be swum and how it should be finished. Were I his coach, would I perhaps advise a different strategy? Yeah, I probably would, but who knows? Who's to say I wouldn't screw him up, right? It's hard to give that advice without context. I feel less confident in that than giving advice on what his program should be, because that one was pretty obvious. But does he need to improve his freestyle leg to break the world record? I don't think so. Not by very much. Maybe he could probably, let me lay down another bold prediction. I think he could break the world record without swimming the freestyle leg faster than 29.5. And that's just based on, that's a half second faster basically. And if he finds, a similar amount of improvement in the other strokes, then he's there. And what we're seeing with Andrew, of course, there's an unprecedented piece of this. I mean, cheers to him for making the 100 breaststroke, the IM, and the 50 free, right? That is as you probably read about in other places, totally unprecedented, and really, really impressive. And I think a lot of people were looking at that 100 fly, how wide open it was behind Dressel, and thinking probably could have made the 100 fly as well, and that would add a layer of impressiveness. Now, I think that's not an obvious decision like not swimming the 100 back, which was an obvious decision in my mind, because it would have had implications for his 200 IM. It would have been hard, would have been really hard to fit in there, and I think now he's sort of coming into the Olympics as the gold medal favorite in the 200 IM, so you don't want to mess with that too much. And I think another interesting angle that I was thinking about this last night is, because I know that I thought this at certain points as I've been following Michael Andrew. I think there was a point where, because of the way his development comes, because it's so unfamiliar to many of us, like we're just so used to swimmers being strong in longer events, and as they get older, they tend to improve their speed, and their improvement curve kind of falls off in longer events. I mean, even if you look at Phelps, right, and the 200 IM, he sort of got to a level pretty early on, and there wasn't that much improvement from that point to the finish of his career. He sort of hovered around the same level. That was an incredible level. So it wasn't like we were like, hey, he's not progressing, right? But I think there was a point a few years ago where I certainly caught myself thinking, like, this guy's, obviously because of the way he'll progress as he gets older, like, he's not going to be good at the 200 IM. And I am happy to admit that I was wrong about that. And he's shown great development in a 200 long course. And I think a lot of people who are listening to this are lying to themselves if they thought that was going to happen. I mean, he's got a steep improvement curve at a very, very, very high level. And that's impressive. I'm excited to keep it watching. And again, like Dressel, like, there's a lot of expectation here. Can you imagine you've been a pro swimmer for 8 years and you're 22 years old and you don't make the Olympic team? Gosh, that is tough. Speaking of pressure, let's pivot here to Simone Manuel. So I was, as I said, I took a trip abroad. I was on my 20-hour trip home. My kids sleeping in the car. My wife was driving. So I was watching the 50 freeze on my phone. And, this is the NBC broadcast where they've got to milk 250s and a 1500 into an hour broadcast. So they kept showing B-roll of Simone Manuel sitting somewhere with her mask pulled down, like waiting to swim the 50 free. And I honestly was looking at it and I was thinking, like, this really is going to be it. She looked like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. And also to come out in an interview after the 100 free, before the meet is over, and just basically say, yeah, like, I was overtrained. It's really hard. I've been dealing with it. It's almost like you've, I think on a certain level, it seems like you're setting yourself up, to not do well. And I put that all in the context of, she swam an incredibly gutty 50 free. And I want to use this to discuss a broader point, because there's still, look, listeners of this podcast, probably not, but there's still too many people out there that look at the 50 free and go, well, whatever, it's easy, you just get in there and, go hard for 24 seconds and then it's over. I think any coach that thinks the 50 free is easy doesn't know how to coach people to be fast in the 50 free. I think any athlete who thinks the 50 free is easy has no idea how to swim the 50. It is a hard event. I'm not going to get into the stupid, it's harder than the 200 fly. Who cares about that kind of stuff, right? It's hard. It's very, very hard. And the race she put together also extremely hard, because she dove in and she was behind. She was out of it, and psychologically that's very, very tough to start a 50 free like that. You have to overcome a lot and hold on to your composure, while you're trying to exert the most possible force you can on the water. And she was able to do that. She was able to get her hand on the wall first. Incredibly impressive swim. She looked massively relieved afterwards to do it. Like that weight had been lifted off. I did a sort of two-part production meeting for this podcast last night. First, I called Milton Elms in Australia, and got all of his thoughts that I could rip off before Joel rips them off on Thursday. And then I called Trevor Gray, my boy Trevor Gray, and so I'm going to give Trevor a shout out on this one. And it's just in the context of Simone and overtraining. We don't have to accept overtraining. What I would be really curious about now that she comes out with this announcement is, it doesn't sound like it, but why isn't Greg Meehan using research-backed, he's the head Olympic coach. Why isn't he using research-backed, state-of-the-art, measures to figure out that somebody's overtrained way before they show up to Olympic trials, to try to qualify for the biggest meet of their life, right? I think that there's stuff out there you don't have to just sort of accept. You don't have to just train, come to the meet, oops, we're overtrained, right? You should be able to see this stuff coming from a long way away and be able to take countermeasures, to do something about it. I feel the same way about this that I feel about, psychological preparation for competition. I wrote way back in 2016, I thought the Australian coaches were incredibly disingenuous, the way they sort of, laid it back on the swimmers that they weren't mentally tough enough, basically, that they folded mentally at the Olympics. That's part of your job as a coach, is to help with that. And there are things you can do. Doesn't mean that they're not. None of them are foolproof. You can't be. We're talking about extreme high pressure situations. So you can't mentally prepare in a way that'll be 100% effective. You cannot prevent 100% of overtraining, but I think you can prevent more. And it's worth investing some time and resources in those things to do it right. Let's turn to coaches a little bit. This is brought up Greg Meehan, and Bob Bowman is back on the staff. And I bring this up only because people who follow this, or people with decent memories, will remember that a few years ago, when it sort of resurfaced that, or I should say surfaced, maybe not I'd sort of heard about it, so for me it was a resurfacing, but for a lot of people it was a surfacing that Bowman had made some inappropriate sexual comments about to Caroline Burkle, and about her brother, and this all came right around a U.S. national meet, and Tim Hinchey at the time said, well, if I had been in charge, Bowman wouldn't have been on the staff. Well, here's Bowman, he's on the staff, you're in charge. Now, people say that's like unfair, like, Chris, just let it go, and believe me, I hear that every day in my day-to-day life. People think like I'm picking on him, and part of that is a desire to just like, hey, can we just like look forward, right? But the problem with it is, from a USA Swimming perspective, there were sort of no consequences. He got like a letter being like, don't be such a naughty boy, and that was that. And I just want to point out that Tim Hinchey, for all his other faults, is completely full of hot air on this one. But I guarantee he won't be asked about it, and he'll be thrilled when USA Swimming dominates again, and as the leader of the organization, he gets some credit for that. Anyway, if I was a real journalist and I was there, it's something I would be asking Tim Hinchey about, because he sort of put himself in a pickle there. And look, the nature of consequences for people is that you have to be backwards looking. Transgressions happen in the past. They don't happen. They don't happen tomorrow. You don't give consequences for something they're going to do tomorrow. You have to be backwards looking. So, as far as the coaching selections, I thought it was fair. The coaches that were selected, at the risk of sounding defensive, I don't really care. I do think that Terry McKeever deserves to be there. And just to back up and talk about the criteria for selection a little bit, it is, as far as I understand, a bit of a subjective selection process. Somebody who knows it better than me, who listens to this, maybe you can correct me, but head coaches are picked ahead of time. Assistant coaches are basically picked on the basis of how many medals the swimmers they coach might produce for Team USA. So if you're thinking, I think coaches might look at it, like I was part of a selection process for international staffs in Denmark, and we chose based on FINA points. It was like whoever's swimmer produced the highest FINA point swim, that was coach number one, and then coach number two. And over time, we actually started thinking about a secondary selection, going like, well, how many swimmers did you put on the team? Because it's not a slam dunk that you should do this. I think it's actually, there's a really good conversation to be had, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to Ron Aitken. But you can see like Greg Troy, especially on that basis, he deserves to be there because Caeleb's going to win a lot of medals at the meet, a lot more than maybe somebody who put more swimmers on the team, but not necessarily are going to come away with 6 medals or so at the Olympics. Anyway, I think Terry deserves to be there. Let's just acknowledge, I think that, and I heard some rumor of this, that the USOC wanted a woman to be on the coaching staff, and I think that's a good thing. I think we should be embarrassed that we didn't have more options than Terry. That says more about the culture that we've created around swimming. And that's not like to cast blame on one person, or it's a collective issue that we have. We have talented coaches that we're missing out on. We have a lot of systems in place that make it so that women are less represented at the top, and I don't think it's for lack of ambition or desire to be there. I think that Terry's going to be a huge asset to have on the coaching staff. Somebody with a lot of experience coaching medalists at the Olympics. And you've got some inexperienced people on that coaching staff. Again, people who deserve to be there. But it's going to be nice to have, sort of a steady veteran coach hand on there. Which leads me to, and by the way, when you're bringing a team of 26 women, I know Lindsay Matenko is the national team director, but she doesn't necessarily have that much coaching experience. It's really good to have a woman who's coaching there. I think that's a big asset. I think it'll be really good. And here's hoping that someday in the future, there will be more and more, because Terry's not going to be around forever. Okay, enough about her. Let's talk about Peter Andrew, who's going to be on there, because I see another really big opportunity here. I was talking in my pre-production meeting last night, and Peter Andrew is going to have to go there and coach more than Michael. If he does just coach Michael, I think that speaks really poorly of him, and it would speak poorly as well of the whole organization, Dave Durden, the whole leadership there. He's got to go and coach more than Michael Andrew, and I think that should be really good for him, and I think it has a lot of promise for the other swimmers and coaches there as well. He's obviously done a very good job coaching his son, but what I see too much is that the Andrews are isolated, and I would like to see, not that they have to become, not that Peter Andrew has to become a good old boy. I don't want that to happen to him. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But, some of the stuff I was talking about, I just think that he could use more connections and relationships and time spent working cooperatively. Would really benefit if he's got an open mind to it. I think it'll really benefit him, and I think the other athletes and coaches that are there would really benefit if they have an open mind to some of what Peter knows as well. So I'm really excited to see him there. Now, let's talk about Ron Aitken. Can we just, any conversation starting at this, and I said this over some of my group texts with coaching friends, any conversation starts with, let's just put in context how impressive what Ron Aitken did was. He put 3 people from a club swimming program on the Olympic team. Okay? And if you're being a complete hater, okay, which sometimes, I'm no less or more of a hater than anybody else. So if I could encapsulate a hater argument, somebody might look at Ron Aitken putting one swimmer on the Olympic team and go well, he just got lucky. He was in the right place, the right time. That supremely talented athlete was there. When you put a second swimmer on the team, then it's sort of that sort of falls away. It's really impossible to sustain that argument, because it's more than one is you cannot attribute to luck. Okay. And when you get to 3, it's okay, what is going on here, right? It is supremely difficult achievement. I think, talk about that selection process, and there's probably a lot of people out there that are upset that Ron Aitken's on the Olympic team. If you had some kind of criteria for selecting the team that was just who pulled off the highest degree of difficulty, then Ron Aitken would be the first assistant coach you choose. What he did was extremely difficult. To borrow from diving, he went up there with 3.8 DD and just ripped it. Okay, and so on that level, he absolutely deserves to be there. And I think club coaches are right to be upset, to feel okay, here we've got a guy who basically achieved a 99.999999999 percentile result for a club coach, and even that's not good enough to make the Olympic staff. That's demoralizing on a certain level, I think, for a lot of club coaches out there. And I get that, but on the other hand, I think that I have a hard time thinking about how we would change the selection process, because really it gets maybe even more arbitrary and subjective if you change it for this particular scenario. And I don't know. I mean, it's worth having the discussion, especially in light of what's going on with college sports and stuff. Do we need to change the club structures? Because to also have more club structures that are potential sort of training grounds for Olympic athletes. That's worth having a discussion over. But right now, the college systems still dominate in terms of the training environments for elite level athletes, and therefore the coaches that coach in those environments. When we get to the top international team selection, they're going to predominate. And that, as morally hard as that is, especially like the whole another angle of this is how many college swim coaches are sort of barely USA Swimming members, you know, in terms of like, yes, they've got a registration and they're going to bring people to some meets, but in terms of a day-to-day member of USA Swimming, you know, it does feel like there are people sort of parachuting in. I've been on that side, okay? So I'm trying to give you a perspective from all angles. And it's just really, really hard. So, you know, if you're upset about it, try to stay focused on giving some kudos to Ron. Glad that him and Brent Archie are going to be out in Hawaii. It's a difficult time to, you know, get people out there. I think, and Ron's been on an Olympic staff before. So, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, as you're criticizing it, make sure that you are thinking about, you know, how you would change the Olympic coach selection, because I think it's a really hard question. And all in all, I think actually they did a pretty good job selecting the team. So, okay, look forward to Thursday for even hotter takes than you've heard on here. Thanks for listening to the Swim Brief, and thanks for watching Olympic trials and supporting the sport of swimming, and I'll see you soon.